This is Stone Cold Export, and today we are checking out the new Ghost Recon Breakpoint Vulkan update. So originally Ghost Recon Breakpoint only supported the ancient DirectX 11 API, resulting in what I would call subpar performance. It was evident that the game was very CPU limited in many cases, as we will see a bit later on, but let's move on to the benchmarking. When benchmarking, I did encounter an issue with Denuvo locking me out for 24 hours every so often, probably due to the different combination of CPU and GPU, the different combination of hardware. Now, luckily, there is a free weekend going on now, so one could make a new account to get back into the game. I'm not saying I did, but that is a possibility. For AMD, I used the 20.3.1 driver, and for NVIDIA, the new 445.75 driver. I tested with an R5 3600 with PBO and AutoOC enabled, paired with 16GB of 3733 MHz CL15 memory, in dual channel of course. I used the ultimate preset to leverage the GPU as much as possible. Also, I disabled the sharpening, even though I prefer the look with it on. I prefer to keep it on when I'm gaming, but for this test, I turned it off. Now, I did not use the built-in benchmark because my experience with that had been a bit rough. So instead, I went for a stroll in the wild, in the woods, in the forest. We start off with GPU performance at 1080p, and in last place we find the GTX 1070, as you would expect. The GTX 1070 delivered the same performance when running DirectX 11 as when running Vulkan. This could be due to a lack of optimization, as NVIDIA will no doubt prioritize the newer Turing architecture. The 5700 XT was 40% faster than the GTX 1070 running either API, and it's pretty much on par with the 2070 Super here running DirectX 11. Switching to Vulkan gave the 5700 XT a 13% performance bump to 87.1 frames per second on average, which was not enough to match the 19% performance jump of the 2070 Super. Turning the resolution up to 1440p, and the 1070 is now down to slightly above 40 frames per second, again delivering the same performance with either API. The 5700 XT is now 41% ahead of the 1070 and delivers about 60 frames per second on average, which is pretty much identical to the 2070 Super running DirectX 11. This time the 5700 XT gained a mere 4% increase in performance when running Vulkan over DirectX 11, indicating that the previous performance increase at 1080p was possibly emphasized by a slight CPU limitation with DirectX 11. The 2070 Super gains a more substantial 12% performance increase, meaning it is now 8% ahead of the 5700 XT. Moving on to 3440 by 1440, and here the GTX 1070 is hovering in the mid-30s with either API. The 5700 XT is now down to a 30% lead over the 1070 running DirectX 11, which has some awful frame spikes every now and again, indicated by the 0.1% low figure. Vulkan does help the 5700 XT a bit. A 12% performance bump is a welcome increase, but the 2070 Super matches the 5700 XT's Vulkan performance when running DirectX 11. Switching to Vulkan increases this by 18% over both the DirectX 11 results and the 5700 XT's Vulkan result. Now let's move to CPU performance, and when testing CPU performance I used the 5700 XT at 1080p high settings, and here are the results. Now all CPUs were tested with 16GB 3200 MHz CL16 memory. The R5 1600 at stock with DirectX 11 comes in with the lowest average figure at 71.5 frames per second on average. The i5 6600K at 4.8 GHz, also running DirectX 11, is delivering a slightly higher average figure, but with some pretty bad frame times. Overclocking the 1600 to 3.9 GHz, a 15% increase in clock speed, gets us an extra 17% worth of performance, indicating a severe CPU bottleneck. The i5 3600 though is doing quite a bit better, coming in 17% ahead of the overclocked 1600 at 97.6 frames per second on average, delivering similar performance to the stock R5 1600 running Vulkan. With Vulkan, the stock 1600 is looking at an incredible 36% performance boost, again proving that in DirectX 11 this game is severely CPU limited. Overclocking the 1600 is still getting us an additional 10% when running Vulkan, and a 29% boost over the DirectX 11 performance. The i5 6600K is looking at a monstrous 59 performance boost when running Vulkan over DirectX 11, which is insane. Now, the frame times though are indicating that we're still somewhat CPU limited in a few scenarios. Moving to the R5 3600, we're looking at a 34% increase in performance, and it's now delivering a very good performance, staying well above 60 frames per second at all times. We're taking a quick look at CPU usage between the i5 6600K at 4.8 GHz and the R5 1600 at stock when running our benchmark. Here the blue lines is the i5 6600K running DirectX 11, and the yellow line is the i5 running Vulkan. We can see that the 6600K is actually working harder with Vulkan than with DirectX 11, and this could be because Vulkan is able to use the CPU resources more efficiently than DirectX 11. And the performance figures for the R5 1600 also indicates this. So here the red line is the 1600 running DirectX 11, and the orange line is the 1600 running Vulkan. And as you can see here, when running Vulkan, the CPU usage decreased dramatically, even though we saw a drastic improvement in frames per second. So the Vulkan update appears to be exactly what this game needed to run smoother, but as the results show, even with Vulkan, a 4-core CPU is at the very limit of what it can do here. Now you can enable VSync or limit the FPS to 60 to solve the high CPU usage. In any case, going forward, I really hope more developers will embrace these low-level APIs such as Vulkan or DirectX 12. With all this in mind, I see no reason to start this game in DirectX 11 mode. That's pretty much all I have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and farewell.